For 20 years, Sang sought peace on Pendle Hill's windswept slopes, trading the shriek of customer service for the wind's whisper and vast Lancashire skies. He wasn't looking for things dwelling in deep shadows, truths hidden beneath folklore and fear. He simply wanted solitude. But on Pendle Hill, where the veil feels thin and history is stained with darkness, solitude doesn't always mean being alone. The gnarled hawthorns clawing at the bruised twilight sky seemed to know this. The thing Sang wasn't looking for eventually found him anyway. His relationship with the landscape, stretching back 5 decades, was about to become far more complex and terrifying than he could imagine. His first real brush didn't come with glowing eyes or snarling fangs. It came as a sensation, a silent, suffocating dread, utterly alien and overwhelmingly hostile. Camping near Ogden Reservoir, the fire warm under a clear sky, the stillness thickened, curdling into something heavy, palpable, malevolent. He'd later describe it as pressure, an invisible weight, the certainty of an unseen predator the firelight couldn't touch or deter. It was a soul-crushing presence slithering up his spine, ancient and filled with terrifying predatory intelligence. "Something is here," his mind screamed. "Something ancient and wrong, and it knows I'm here." Panic, cold and absolute, seized him. Thought dissolved. Only the frantic primal urge remained. Flee before the unseen horror revealed itself. He scrambled, gear forgotten or fumbled, escaping into the night with a certainty he hadn't imagined surviving. He would understand much later that this paralyzing fear was his first taste of the entities ruling Pendle Hill after dark. Driven by a morbid need to know if he'd imagined the horror, he soon returned to the same area. Light rain tapped his tarp as he sat beneath it, nerves frayed, watching the small fire hiss. Then he saw movement, slow, deliberate, fundamentally wrong. A figure moved through the tree line, far too large, too vertical for a deer, too controlled for stray livestock. Then he saw them, 2 glowing red embers suspended in the darkness. Ice flooded his veins, stealing his breath, rooting him to the spot. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the sudden, terrible silence. 2 points of burning red light ignited, not reflection, but emission, alive with cold, calculating menace. Wolfman. The name formed unbidden. Useless. Terror locked his muscles. Cold sweat broke out on his skin. The world narrowed to those eyes, promising a violence he felt powerless to stop. The thing stood silently at the edge of the shadows, observing, radiating menace. That was the first time he truly saw what people now often call Dogman. The first time terror had a horrifying shape. He hated the term. Wolfman felt more accurate, though even that fell utterly short, failing to capture the chilling, unnatural intelligence glinting behind those eyes, or the sheer primal terror they inspired. The creature was massive, easily clearing branches 8 or 9 feet up, its hulking frame suggesting terrifying power. But it was the presence, that palpable aura of dread, that truly unmanned him, triggering that primal scream from some deep, ancestral place. Danger. Wrong. Leave. This wasn't merely a beast acting on instinct. It was a thinking predator, aware of its control, radiating hostility so thick it felt like touching a live wire. It made no move to attack that time, offered no growl, no charge. It just watched him, letting the terror soak in, and then melted back into the darkness as if it had never been, leaving him shaking uncontrollably by his dying fire. Over the next 2 decades, stealth camping away from designated spots, he would see them again, perhaps 24 times. Not every trip, but often enough to solidify the dread, etch the fear into his soul. Each encounter brought the same suffocating pressure, a psychic weight announcing their proximity, sometimes miles away, raising the hairs on his arms, flooding his mouth with the coppery taste of fear. The terror became a familiar poison. These weren't mere frightening moments, they were assaults. The pressure felt like a physical weight crushing his sanity, leaving him drained and jumpy for days, even weeks. He'd lie awake in his tent on subsequent trips, heart pounding at every snapped twig, plagued by the memory of those eyes, that presence. It was grinding psychological warfare, wearing him down, making him question his resolve and sanity, for constantly returning to the source of his deepest fear. Often they were flicker-quick movements at sight's edge, shadows detaching from deeper shadows, hulking silhouettes on a ridge against the dying light that chilled his blood. Sometimes terrifyingly, they revealed more. He saw differences, unsettling variations on a horrifying theme. Some had broad, powerful faces reminiscent of pit bulls, radiating brutal strength. Others had long, narrow muzzles like Dobermans, sleek and predatory. One he glimpsed clearly looked almost like a timber wolf, but impossibly large, standing upright with chilling ease. Their fur often looked mangy, uneven, thick and dark, sometimes strangely patchy as if torn in some unseen violent struggle. He'd seen eyes glow infernal red, but also a feral, watchful amber. Yet all shared one terrifying trait, undeniable awareness, an ancient predatory intelligence. They were not mindless beasts. They watched, they judged, and at times he felt with sickening certainty they toyed with him, savoring his fear. He came to recognize the accompanying odor, a foul blend of rot and wet dog, a stench crawling into his nostrils, announcing their presence and ratcheting up the terror. He never saw them in groups. They seemed solitary, territorial, and disturbingly intelligent enough to assert dominance without overt violence, preferring psychological warfare. On more than one occasion, the sheer grinding weight of their presence, the constant oppressive fear, had forced him to pack up and leave early, feeling mentally violated, his nerves shredded. He vividly recalled one bluff charge, exploding from the undergrowth, a blur of dark fur and terrifying speed, straight at him. In that split second, Sang knew he was dead. No time to react, no possibility of escape. Pure, undiluted terror blanked his mind as the massive shape bore down, only to halt mere feet away, radiating hate and dominance. He was left gasping, legs weak, the image burned into his memory, a stark reminder of his utter vulnerability. Pendle Hill seemed to attract them, or perhaps, Sang wondered in darker moments, it created them. Its history was soaked in the supernatural. The infamous Pendle witch trials of the 1600s left behind more than folklore. Deep currents of darkness remained, stories of demons, spectral black hounds, rumored cults, strange ghostly lights. Even George Fox, founder of the Quakers, climbed the hill and wrote of powerful, overwhelming visions. Sang suspected the land's dark history might have summoned them, or drawn them in, like moths to a troubled flame. He didn't see them as demons, though. Demons didn't patrol woods or stake out territory. These felt older, more primal. Manifestations of nature's darker side, beings from another plane bleeding through. He couldn't say, but felt certain they weren't born of normal evolution. No natural species had eyes glowing from within, an aura of dread that could stop a heart, and the cold intelligence to weaponize fear. He never tried to photograph them. When he saw them clearly, the terror was too absolute, his reaction purely instinctual. Freeze or flee. It was always dark, always fleeting. Besides, what would a blurry photo prove? People already had their minds made up. Believers would believe, skeptics would scoff. He had spoken cautiously to a few others. Some listened with knowing eyes, sharing their own hushed accounts. Others offered polite disbelief. He felt no need to convince anyone or seek validation. The terror was his burden. He just wanted to understand his small, terrifying piece of the mystery. What struck him most was that despite their terrifying presence and strength, they rarely seemed to cause direct physical harm he knew of. He speculated they understood the consequences, that harming a human would bring an organized, relentless response they wished to avoid. So they chose intimidation, psychological warfare, control through raw terror. He often wondered why they allowed him specifically to see them so many times, why they never did more than observe or menace. Unsettlingly, he sometimes felt they knew him, marked early on, tested, and deemed unworthy of further action. Not a threat, not a target, just another human trespasser whose fear perhaps amused them. Despite the genuine terror, the sleepless nights, the lingering dread, he kept going back. The deep peace of the hill when quiet, the profound isolation, it still called to him, an antidote to the modern world. Though the encounters remained a chilling possibility, he accepted the risk, perhaps foolishly, which brought him to tonight. The chill sharpened as deepening twilight swallowed the bruised colors of the sky. Sang moved about his small campsite on the eastern slope, checking his tent's guy lines, a small anchor in a place poised on the edge of menace. The memory of yesterday's irate caller faded, replaced by the crunch of leaves underfoot and the sharp focus survival demanded out here. He gathered dry branches, the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves sharp in the cool air. His movements were economical, honed by years, stacking wood, checking the wind. His senses were always sharp out here, a precaution born of terrifying experience. Yet tonight, the usual hypervigilance, the readiness for dread, felt strangely unnecessary. The background hum of fear vibrating beneath Pendle's soil, the feeling preceding them, seemed inexplicably muted. The silence was deep, yes, but clean, unburdened by hostility. Returning towards his head torch's faint glow marking the campsite, arms full, he froze mid-step. A branch tumbled silently onto leaf litter. There, at the tree line, beyond his tent's small circle of safety. Movement. A block of shadow detaching itself, too large, too vertical for any normal creature. His breath hitched. Muscle memory screamed danger. He braced for the familiar, sickening wave of dread, the clenching gut, the paralysis, the terror defining these woods for 20 years. But it didn't come. The expected fear was completely, shockingly absent. This one stood with unnatural stillness, absorbing the faint light. It towered, head-clearing branches 8, maybe 9 feet up. Its sheer bulk was staggering, a density speaking of immense power. He could just make out the uneven texture of its covering. Thick, dark fur, perhaps, strangely patchy, matted. He braced automatically for the foul smell, wet dog and awful, but the air remained clear, carrying only wood smoke and damp earth. He saw its hands, definite hands, not paws, resting lightly against a tree trunk. And then the eyes found his. Not the familiar malevolent red or feral amber, the light screaming predator and triggering helpless terror. These were shards of impossible ice blue, lit from within, throwing back twilight with an intensity not mere reflection. The gaze wasn't an animal's blank stare, nor the menacing glare haunting his nightmares. It was level, appraising, ancient. A mind clearly worked behind those lights, cold, distant, profoundly aware. Sang's heart hammered once, twice, then inexplicably slowed. His breath eased out in a shaky cloud, the automatic tightening in his shoulders, the fight-or-flight response honed over 2 decades, simply didn't happen. Where icy dread should have flooded his veins, paralyzing him, there was instead a profound, disarming stillness, a strange resonance with the quiet air. Curiosity, sharp and entirely unwelcome given his past experiences, pricked at him. The absence of terror was almost more shocking, more world-altering than the creature's presence. The creature held his gaze for another heartbeat, an eternity between breaths. Then it turned. The massive form pivoted with a fluid grace defying its weight and size, making absolutely no sound on the leaf-strewn ground. It didn't bound or crash away like a startled animal, or melt into shadows like the others. It simply flowed back into the deeper darkness and was gone, leaving only a swaying fern frond. Sang stood rooted, firewood suddenly heavy in numb arms. His pulse was remarkably steady. Profound awe washed through him, vast and unfamiliar, chasing away the ghosts of expected fear, his constant unwelcome companion here for decades. Safety. The word felt foreign, heretical, here on Pendle Hill, heartland of his terror. Yet it settled over him, earned and unexpected, like a warm blanket on a freezing night. He carefully stacked the wood and built his fire, flames catching quickly, painting trees in flickering orange. The usual dancing shadows seemed benign tonight, holding no hidden watchers, no suffocating pressure. The deep, serene quiet held through the night. For the first time in years camping on this haunted hill, Sang slept without stirring until dawn painted the sky rose and gold, waking to a fragile, unexpected sense of sanctuary. He packed up slowly in the morning light, the usual haste absent. The questions remained, perhaps sharper. What was that? Why so different from the terrifying beings before? Why the blue eyes, the silence, the overwhelming peace instead of soul-crushing terror? He didn't think he'd ever have answers. But as Pendle Hill loomed, ancient and unyielding, he knew he would keep returning, because somewhere in the shadows, something watched. And after last night, he felt, perhaps for the first time, it wasn't just waiting to menace him, but maybe, just maybe, waiting for answers too. Sang's experiences, particularly his terrifying encounters with the beings he called Wolfman, highlight the chilling reality that some mysteries refuse to stay hidden. These encounters, leaving deep psychological scars and unanswered questions, are shared by more people than many realize. If you, like Sang, have seen a Wolfman, if you carry the memory of those watchful eyes or that suffocating presence, DeadNet Studios is here to listen. Your story matters. Share your encounter via email at deadnetstudios@gmail.com. Together, by compiling these accounts, perhaps we can shed light on what truly walks the shadows.
In the shadows of the digital night, we've wandered far and seen some sights, from haunting tales to eerie lights. DeadNet Studios, where fear ignites. So long, farewell from the crimson hollows. We'll be back again with more tales to follow. Keep the lights dimmed and your curiosity high. For in DeadNet's realm, the spirits never die. We've danced with ghosts, chased legends on, through cryptid codes, stories untold. In cyberspace, where mysteries unfold, our journey's been daring, brave and bold. So long, farewell from the darkened halls, where shadows whisper and the unknown calls. Keep your eyes wide and your mind astir, for the mysteries of DeadNet are a haunting blur. In the world of strange and the unexplained, we find our stories wildly untamed. With the trivial's end, we take a little rest. They find the shackles every best.